All right, so there are some things that are kind of normative in our culture, and even in our households, they really do need to change. They're things that aren't really good to do, but it's just kind of the way that we do things. From issues such as respect and authority to abuse and all kinds of different things. But the one that I want to talk about today, I'll get to in just a minute. I was watching a social media survey, so for those of you who watch the TikTok or, Facebook videos or whatnot, basically, there's people who go around asking questions of just the random people. And the question that blew me away was they were asking men, just going around asking men, what order do you put these people in? Your wife, your mother, your daughter, what order are they in? And that question didn't surprise me. What blew me away was the answers that people were giving. So a lot of guys were saying, well, mom comes first, and then daughter, and then wife. Or they would say, well, my mom's dead, so it's my daughter and my wife. And one of them even said this. He said, well, my daughter's not replaceable. Little tense there. Don't know if she was in boot throwing distance, but So anyways, God obviously disagrees with these things, but it's kind of just the way that we do things in our culture. So we're on a series where we're talking about building a legacy of good relationships. We're looking at not just marriage, but a lot of different things. But today we're going to focus on the idea of leaving and cleaving, which comes from Genesis 2, which says this in verses 20 through 25. It says, "The man gave names to all the livestock, to the birds of the sky, and to every wild animal. But for the man no helper was found corresponding to him. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to come over the man, and he slept. And God took one of his ribs and closed his flesh at that place. Then the Lord God made the rib he had taken from the man into a woman, and brought her to the man. And the man said, 'This one at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This one will be called woman, for she was taken from man.' This is why a man leaves his father and mother and bonds with his wife." And the other translations will read cleaves to his wife. It's the same concept. "And they become one flesh. Both the man and his wife were naked, yet felt no shame." So right out of the get-go, we need to address the elephant in the room, and it's a very familiar translation to say that he took from Adam's rib. That's not really the idea there, but without getting too into it, the idea here is he took from his stuff, the stuff that made him, okay? So you shouldn't try to build too big of a doctrine on the idea that Adam was like missing a rib or something, and you also probably shouldn't go through life thinking that men have less ribs than women. Men and women both have the same amount of ribs. That's not the point of the story. The point is rather that men and women are made of the same stuff, their substance, if you will. They're of the same. That's why they fit together. Now, why doesn't it say that women should leave and cleave or leave and be bound? Why does it only say that men should? In fact, it says here, we'll read it again, "This is why a man leaves his father and mother." Why does it say that? Well, there's two main issues. The first issue is that it's contextual. So in other words, the man was looking for a spouse. He was looking for a partner. So the man leaves his wife. It's just for the context. If the woman was the subject of the sentence, it would have been, therefore, a wife leaves her father and mother. Okay, so just so we're all on the same page. But there's also the second thing that's happening here, and that's that women were already expected to leave their family. They were already expected to do that. When in this Semitic ancient culture, what would happen is they'd negotiate the marriage, and then they'd have their week or so of a marriage festival or ceremony, however you want to say, and they would usually consummate the marriage actually in her parents' house, and then they would move out into their own house. So with all that being said, she was negotiated in kind of like a deal kind of situation, not necessarily as property, but still in that context of leaving from one household into another household, whereas a man was not like that. So it was already expected for women to do that. Here, he's more of just leveling the playing field, saying, hey, men should leave and cleave too. Maybe a comparable thing would be in the New Testament where it says that, about the whole, well, let's not open a whole can of worms. Let's just give you one thing to get mad at me for today, not 5 things to get mad at me for, okay? Let's space it out. So I want to talk to 3 groups of people. The first, single people, then married people, then people with kids, okay? We'll start off with the single people, because a lot of times you read a part like this, a verse like this, and you think, okay, what do I do with that if I'm single? Like, okay, leave and cleave, okay, that's great. So what do I do with that? I mean, like, think of Song of Solomon, for instance, right? You go to that book and you're like, how in the world is this going to have anything to say to me as a single person? So here, when he's talking about, leaving and cleaving, I think it's very important that we talk about something that is oftentimes overlooked, and that's to be content where you are. Be content where you are. If you're single, be content with that. If you're married, be content with that. Wherever you are in life, wherever you find yourself, be content there. Marriage is not going to make you happy. And in fact, on a bigger scale than that, you could say your happiness cannot depend on someone else. This is absolutely essential because you see people do this in marriage. They'll say, if only my husband or wife would do this. I'm mad because I'm not happy, I'm not satisfied because they. See, your happiness is completely dependent on your spouse. If they do all the right things, and that's just setting your marriage up for failure. Well, the same thing is true in a kind of single situation too, where you say, okay, well, if I would get married, then I'd be happy. I'm not happy, I'm not content, but if I'm married, then I'd be happy. And you see a lot of single people, it's not that they deserve to be single. I'm not saying that, definitely not. But you see a lot of single people are used to being single. They live like they're single. You know what I mean? Ever been to a bachelor pad? Yeah, those bachelors know that they're not married. Now, when there's a wife in the situation, obviously things change. Your man cave goes from a man cave into the kid's bedroom. Things change when you're married versus when you're single. And it's not that one's good or bad, but the fact remains you cannot expect for that thing to bring you happiness. If you're not happy right here, right now, nothing else is going to change to bring that. You have to choose to be content wherever you are. And I will also say that being single has its own rewards. I know a lot of times we focus on the rewards of being married, but there's actually a lot of rewards of being single too. Paul talks about a few of them. Even making the argument that he wishes people would not marry as much, which we'll get into some other day probably. Maybe not. But being single also has its own challenges, obviously. Being lonely and that kind of stuff. And it's compounded by the problem that, does anybody here watch movies, watch television shows? If you watch movies, no doubt you have picked up on the idea that they all kind of give this idea that you have to be in a relationship to be happy. Even our kids are watching kid movies where there's people in relationships and they're like, some 10-year-old and then, I need a girlfriend. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You need to learn how to, go take a shower and do your own laundry. That's what you need to learn how to do. You don't need to be, that young worried about those big of issues. I mean, I know some 50-year-olds who shouldn't even be concerned about that. Just leave it alone and live your life, Anyways. But what happens when you go to a relationship expecting to find your happiness, you get 2 broken people and they both leach each other dry. Marriage is supposed to be 2 whole people who build into each other and they have a firm foundation. But when you have 2 broken people who are both looking for somebody else to make them happy, I'm not content with life, I'm not content with this relationship, I'm not content with myself, so I want to change everything around me so that I'll be happy. Well, you have 2 broken people going in, and they just suck each other dry. They don't make each other better versions of themselves. They make each other the worst version of themselves. Not overly a healthy thing. And it actually kind of sabotages your relationships because you're always looking for something that cannot happen. Did you know, married people, real quick, I know I'm talking to single people, but just real quick. Married people, have you figured out yet that you cannot expect your spouse to be your everything? Have you figured that out yet? You can't, can you? I mean, you're just asking for too much that your spouse is not able to deliver. You know what I mean? He never listens to me. Well, she's always so whiny. I mean, you can't just expect them to be something other than who they are. 1 Thessalonians 5 says this. It says, rejoice always. And I remember that we're talking about single people here, so let's apply this idea of being single. Rejoice always, pray constantly, give thanks in everything, even in being single. For this is God's will for you. This is God's will for you. Whether married or single, this is God's will for you. The idea here being be grateful and don't compare yourself. You know who the most unhappy people are in life are people who compare their situation to everybody else's. I'll get to that in just a minute. But there's this idea that people have that if you're not married, if you're not in a relationship, you're wasting your life. You better hurry up and produce children because you're wasting your life if you're not. So what happens if you can't produce a child? Is your whole life a waste then? I mean, come on, let's think about this realistically. Jesus was never married. Are you honestly trying to argue that his life was a waste of time because he was never married? Like, these are things that don't really make sense. But we just have this unspoken rule that, like, get with it. And I think that there's a lot of tension put on single people that isn't really that helpful or healthy. And I would say three things to single people before I move on. First off, don't get desperate in your looking. Don't get so desperate to be in a relationship that you settle for anybody. That's a huge mistake. And you're not going to be happy anyways. Second off, I would say don't isolate. Just because you're not in a relationship or not married doesn't mean that you have to break yourself and live your life for yourself by yourself. That's not what that means. Rather, still connect with other people. And the third thing is a spouse is a partner, not a maid. Well, I'll let that one sink in for a little bit. So basically what I'm getting at here is if you're single, focus on being a person of character and being a person of discipline, rather than going out and saying, I'm looking for my Proverbs 31 wife. I'm looking for this guy who's big and strong and laughs at everything and makes me laugh and he's a dreamboat. Well, that's a television. You're not going to find that. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to find that in a person. Rather than that unfair situation, rather focus on being a person of character, be a person of discipline. Learn how to do your own laundry, how to wash your dishes. I mean, these are important tasks to learn. And when you get married, it's not like, oh, my spouse will take care of that. Why should they be responsible for following you around cleaning up your mess? Like, what? Now, obviously, I'm not saying that married people shouldn't, find a system that works for them, divide chores, all kinds of stuff. I'm not saying that at all. But rather, I'm saying you don't just get married so you can leave it all for your spouse. It can be their problem and not yours. That's definitely not what we're doing. So moving on to married people, which I would say is probably a larger majority of the church here today. Genesis 2:24 says this. It says, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and bonds with his wife, and they become one flesh. And this is the part of the message where everyone's going to get mad. You now have a new immediate family when you get married. That means your old family is no longer your immediate family. Okay? Now, we're going to get to how this applies as grandparents and parents in just a minute, but for now I want to talk to the people who are actually married. What this verse means is you have a new immediate family, and your new immediate family takes priority over your old family. When you're a kid, it's your mom and your dad, right? It's their house, the rules because they say so. When you're married, that doesn't fly anymore. That's not a factor anymore. It's now you and somebody else have formed a new family. What if you don't have kids? It's still a new family, even without the presence of kids. Kids don't make the household, the man and the wife do. Society is built on men and women being married, not on kids. This is important because I kind of feel like we kind of get things off a little bit. So who's going to lead your family is what it really comes down to. And maybe a simple example would show you exactly what I'm asking. When the holidays come around, who's mad that you didn't do it their way? See what I'm saying? Now that kind of tells you who's really running your household. Not necessarily in every situation, but it kind of helps you point in the right direction. Who's going to lead your family? It's either going to be your parents or your in-laws. It's going to be your kids, or it's going to be you and your spouse. And make no mistake, if you say, no, we're not going to do our household like that, somebody else will step into the vacuum. Just because you don't want to take ownership and leadership for your own household doesn't mean nobody else will. They will. And I'm saying this because there's grandparents and parents here too that need to hear this. Your kids or your grandkids have gotten married and you are not the head of their household. Very important issue that I feel like is not discussed in church. There's this idea that there's a patriarchy, right? No, not the patriarchy like feminists are talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where there's a patriarch of a family and everybody, the kids and the grandkids, have to submit to that head of the family line. And that's not how the Bible actually teaches things. Even when you look at Abraham, his kids moved out and moved on before he died. And in fact, it details his death out of chronological order. Do you know why? Because he was not the head of the next household. They were moving him out of the main spotlight to focus on Isaac and then on Jacob and then on Joseph. The moral of the story that I'm trying to get out here is somebody's going to lead your family. It has to be you as the husband and wife. If you are married, these are absolute essentials. Never, ever, ever go to the parents or the in-laws to get their side, or to get them on your side, I should maybe say better, and to go to them to complain about your spouse or to get them involved in your proxy war. This is where you go to the parents or the in-laws and you say something to them either in front of your spouse or behind your spouse's back, either or, to try to get their input so you have more fuel to win the argument. People do this all the time too, in Christian households too. As a pastor, I see this a lot. I know people are going to act like, we don't do that, but I'm telling you, you'd be surprised how many people do this. So now you've got one and two people argument that has now turned into a family affair, and there's a dynamic of just not a healthy marriage. Ultimately, nobody should know that you're in a disagreement but you two. If you're married and you're in a disagreement, nobody should know. Learn how to master what's called the poker face. What that means is never correct your spouse in public. Never, ever correct your spouse in public. Okay? By the way, if I look at you during this message, I'm not saying I'm talking to you, okay? I just try to make eye contact with people, okay? And I tend to focus on people that I know better or that I know not better. If you're in the middle, probably not. So, okay, all right. Nobody should know your business but you two. So if you don't ever correct your spouse in public, and never fight with your spouse in public. You know what I mean? Never fight with your spouse in public. If there is anybody else around, put on a fake smile if you have to, because that's nobody else's business. Your marriage is your business. It's not your parents' business. It's not your kids' business. Never have a disagreement in front of your kids. Have you ever done that one? Yeah, I've been there. What a stupid idea. And then the whole rest of the day you're thinking, well, that was about the stupidest thing I've ever done. It's not your kids' business. It's none of their business. What's even worse is when you start including your kids in your argument. You with kids, you know what I'm talking about. You know what we're not even going to build on that. We'll just move on. You know what I'm talking about. I have never, ever brought an issue up about Gracie from this stage. I have brought up issues about common issues that married people have, and some gossips thought I was talking about my wife, but I was not talking about my wife, because I have never once brought up an issue that I had with Gracie or something that she and I do. Like the whole leaving shoes out and tripping over them, that's not really an argument that we have. I'm not saying our marriage is perfect. We have our own problems, right? But you're not going to hear me talk about those things because it's none of your business, right? And as a pastor, there's a lot of times where people think because you're the pastor, they can kind of weasel their way into your home life, how you pastor, how you're married, how you parent. But that's none of your business either. Just because I'm a pastor doesn't mean it's your business. And the same thing goes both ways. I don't just waltz myself into people's marriage. I can see if somebody's having an issue, and I have my thoughts, but I do not share them with people. And if people ask me, hey, pastor, can you comment on this? Then I will comment on it, but not in a public setting. We have a question and answer box. If somebody asks in a question and answer box an obvious marital issue or wanting me to weigh on it from stage, I would say this is not a question and answer question. This is a come talk to me in my office, and I'll be happy to talk with you guys. You know, I'd love to see your marriage blossom and bloom. I don't want to see people get divorced. I want to see them with the successful marriage. I understand that it's not always going to happen. I understand. Right? Okay. So, now we're moving on from that. Make sure that nobody is aware that you are in a disagreement with your spouse. I can't say this loud enough because there's a lot of times where people will argue around other people, or there's a look all over their face. And you can hear them mumbling, oh, they're stupid. And you're just like, oh, they had a fight before they came to church today. But obviously, that's nobody else's business, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Now, I will say a couple more things about married people before I move on to the parents. Beware of living with your parents or your parents living with you. Not always this is a bad thing, especially in the economy that we live in. It's very difficult, right? It's very difficult. I mean, oh my goodness, the mortgage is killing. But anyways, even if you can afford the mortgage and the water payment, yeah, I thought I'd get a laugh out of that. Even if you can't afford all that, there's nothing necessarily wrong about sharing a household. This is what needs to happen if you share a household, whether you're talking about sharing a household with parents or with friends. Doesn't matter. This rule applies. Make sure that they understand that we have our household, you have your household, we're sharing a roof, but we have her separate here, right? And if you can't do that, find a different situation. When you look at the Bible, you see Abraham and Lot, and they were not having a good time. A lot of fights. So what was the obvious solution? Go live somewhere else. There wasn't like a written rule you had to sit there and fight with each other. If you're not getting along, find something else to work. And I will say beware of living with your parents, because a lot of times this is the specific situation I'm talking about. There'll be a parent that is dying, or so they think. So they say, let's have them move in with us and we'll take care of them. And it sounds like a good idea. Really, it does. But you'd be surprised how long those years of death can last. They can really drag out. Now, I'm not saying this in like a mean kind of way. You definitely should care about your aging family. I have been very vocal about this since I got here. You should be very, very concerned about not abandoning the elderly. Absolutely. I am very much against sticking people in a nursing home and just forgetting about them. Very much, and I've been very vocal about that. However, the issue happens, there's a household tension when you bring the parents in. Because you've got, you're in a similar situation, I take it. So what happens is you're trying to lead your family, they're trying to lead their family. You both disagree about how to get there. And then the kids, typically, not always, but typically the kids have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they want to prove themselves because, well, I'm not a kid anymore. So their parents will actually say something that's true and they could benefit from, but instead they get their feelings hurt because their pride got involved. See what I mean? So when I say that to say this, just be careful. There's a lot of household tension that can happen from this. You can get through it. You can find a way. Just be careful that there's enough space in your marriage for your spouse. Your ailing parent does not take the place of your spouse. Okay? That's the first thing I'm trying to say. The second thing I'm trying to say is make sure that your spouse comes first. It gets very, very difficult to playing politics and trying to, make everybody happy. You're not going to make everybody happy. Did you know that? Ooh, that's painful, especially for the people pleasers and introverts in the room. They're thinking, oh no, found somebody being mad at me. Yes, somebody's going to be mad at you. No matter what you do, somebody's going to be mad at you. You move out, you stay in, doesn't matter, somebody's going to be mad. So here's what I'm getting at, though. Whatever happens, your spouse has to come first, no matter what. And I will also say stand up for your spouse. Stand up for your spouse. Okay, there was an issue that was going on a couple months back, and somebody, I wasn't even involved, so I just kept my nose out of it because I was like, it's none of my business. I have nothing to say about this. Well, then they started attacking my spouse. So I stepped into the situation and said, this isn't my business, but it is now. You're done. I put my foot down and I said, you're not talking to my wife like that. You can talk to me as whatever, you do whatever you want about me. I don't care. I mean, I'm in ministry. You got to get used to people talking bad about you when you're in ministry. But you talk about my wife, now we're in a whole different ballgame. That's no. You want to see me go from pastor to ghetto? Start attacking my wife and my kids. I get real ghetto real fast. I haven't always been this immaculate perfection that you see before you today. But I tell you, there has been some times when there has been some language coming out of my mouth when my wife and my kids are involved. Now, I've done my best since I've become a pastor to change the way I talk and the way I do stuff. I understand that. I've tried to be very patient. I've also oftentimes had a lot of reasons to shoot my mouth off, and I've done pretty good so far of keeping my mouth shut. It's really not so hard once you think about it. You just kind of don't say something. This is what you're doing. This is what you need to do. And so once you figure it out, it's all right. But basically what I'm getting at here is don't throw your spouse under the bus. Stand up for them. You don't need to be bad-mouthing to somebody else. You don't need to be ragging on them. You don't need to be making them feel like garbage all the time. And if somebody else is attacking them, have their back. Have their back. No matter what, your spouse comes first. Not your friends, not your parents, not your kids, your spouse. Remember that. So now we can move on to parents, because I haven't made enough people mad, so let's make some more people mad. Parents, okay? Or older married people. Without kids or after kids, so whether you never had kids or whether your kids moved out, either way, the marriage remains. What I'm saying is this: children will not fulfill you, your spouse will. Now, this is the part where people are going to get really irritated because well, my kid is my baby. Okay, all right. Hear what I'm saying, okay? If you put your kids before your spouse, what's going to happen, first off, it's not healthy. Your kids are going to grow up thinking that the whole world revolves around them. It doesn't. Your spouse is not going to feel very loved. Your marriage is going to get weakened. There's just a whole series of things that's bad from this, okay? And when you look to your kids to satisfy you instead of to your spouse, you're setting yourself up for failure. And what I see happen is I see a lot of loveless marriages where the husband or the wife is not loving the other, and then they try to turn their affections to their kids instead. This is a terrible idea. Actually, with my work in Tularosa, I told you guys about how I dealt with a lot of drug addicts. One thing that you always saw with drug addicts is their kid became their whole world. It was a very unhealthy dynamic, and the kid was left to raise up this drug addict parent. Now, I'm not saying drug addicts are the only people who do this. I'm not saying that at all. However, I am saying that there's a very unhealthy dynamic you see in the world today where kids are put before the spouse. It should not be like this, okay? And I'm seeing from the looks on your faces you're still disagreeing with me. Spouse, kids. There's a hierarchy. If there's a conflict, whose side are you on? The spouse's side. What if your spouse is wrong? The spouse's side. You have each other's back. Now, if we're talking about an abuse kind of situation, well, that's a whole different ballgame, okay? I'm not saying you should stand by while your spouse beats the crap out of your kid. I'm not saying that, okay? So if there's an abuse situation, we're in a different argument now. But in a typical disagreement, your kids are not a part of the conversation. It's a husband-wife conversation that they are not a part of. See what I mean? Don't rope them into it. Don't drag them into it. Leave them out of it. It's not healthy for them. They are not the center of your world. They are not going to make you happy. Your spouse fulfills you, not your kids. Now, obviously, we could go off from there. What in the case of divorce, in the case of abandonment, all kinds of different stuff like that. We're not going to talk about that right now because this message is already long enough, and I've already made enough people mad. So moving on, as your kids grow up, this is extremely important. As your kids grow up, your role in their life changes. If you try to maintain the same standard with them as an adult as you did with them as a kid, first off, you're going to push them away. That's the first problem. Second off, you're asking for a problem. And third off, you're asking for their marriage to fail because you're demanding that they still come to you instead of go to their spouse. So the Bible says leave and cleave, and you say, I say no. So now you're at direct odds with what the Bible says. And then once again, these are common things that we do, but they're not right things that we do. So as your kids grow up, your role changes. You go from raising a child to advising an adult when asked. And why I mention that is because sometimes we get this idea that we need to give counsel to our kids unasked for. We always have an opinion about something, right? That's not your job anymore. It's not your job. And furthermore, you cannot substitute the Holy Spirit in their life anyways. God's going to do a work in their life, or he's not going to do a work in their life. But either way, you trying to cram what you're trying to say down their throat is not going to fix that. Unfortunately, what oftentimes happens, what oftentimes happens is people, when their kids move out, they kind of get aimless. They don't know what their life purpose is anymore. And the reason why is because they made their whole life revolve around their kids. So their kids are gone. What do I do now? What's the purpose of my life? Where do I go? And so they're just waiting for grandkids, not because their kids are in a healthy place of producing grandkids, but because they are in an unhealthy place of feeling abandoned and they need somebody. That's not a healthy dynamic either. Also, trying to pressure your kids over and over again to have kids is not a healthy thing. When they are ready, they will have kids or they won't have kids. Either or, you need to get your hands off that. You need to get your hands off that, let them have their household. But either way, without kids, your life, you still have life. When your kids move out, you still have a purpose, you still have you, right? It's the exact same thing for people who never had kids. Their life still has meaning. It's not like they don't exist because they don't have kids. And I know there's a big push nowadays, on one side you have the people who say women should not have any kids because they don't need to be part of the patriarchy. And then on the other side you have, women should do nothing but have kids and stay at home. And obviously the extremes are usually going to be where the error is, but that's kind of an issue that's not really, there's still life even without kids. That's what I'm saying. So, if you're not married or if you don't have kids, either way, you're created on purpose, for purpose. Not for a purpose. There's not one thing out there that if you miss that one thing, you've missed your purpose in life. Your whole life has purpose. You're created on purpose. God did it on purpose. It wasn't an accident. It might have been a surprise, like, oh, we weren't expecting a pregnancy, which always blows me away because, like, what else comes from intimacy? Like, you should actually be more surprised when you don't have a kid. But never mind. I'm getting off track here. Either way, even in the mundane things of your life has purpose. Even in the mundane things. Oh, I don't serve in ministry. I have this job that I hate, and I come home to an empty house. Your life is pregnant with purpose. It's not all the things that give you purpose. God has created you with purpose inherently in your being. If you're looking for something to give you purpose, the problem is an error in your way of thinking. It's an error in your way of thinking. If your kids are married, though, you have no say in their marriage and you have no say in their partner choice. What I oftentimes see is I see parents trying to divide their kids and get them to get a divorce. That is a huge mistake. A huge mistake. Matthew 19:6 says this. It says, so they are no longer two but one flesh. Now, let me just stop myself here. If you are sitting here and you're thinking, wow, none of this hit on me. First off, try to find something that does hit on you. Always try to find something that hits on you instead of trying to find how somebody else who wasn't here should have heard the message that they weren't here for. Don't do that. Try to find something for you. But yes, I do realize that not everything is going to hit with everybody. I understand that. Matthew 19:6. In fact, here's the biggest problem with speaking from a stage. You can try to hit things from every different angle, but I guarantee you there's a situation I did not account for. So there's always going to be that one person, and they always call him Monday morning for some reason. Well, what about this situation? You're right. You have a situation that doesn't perfectly line up with what I was talking about. However, I think we can all agree that there's something here for everybody. Matthew 19:6 says, so they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. And what I've heard is people will, with a straight face, they'll say how this applies to their marriage until they get a divorce, and then it doesn't apply. And when it comes to their kids, it doesn't apply to their kids because I don't like the person that they married. You hear what I'm saying? I don't like the person that they married. I don't want them together, so now it's okay that I'm saying this and doing this. That's really not a good thing. The Bible says to train a child in the way that they should go, then you release them to go. What's the point of raising a child in the way that they should go if you never release them? You don't have to train them for that. Hey, I'm a helicopter parent. I'm going to guide every single moment of your life. You don't need to know how to think for yourself. I've got you covered. And so then there's always that one parent, and I hope there's nobody here that's thinking this, but tends to be that one parent who brings up that verse, well, the Bible says to respect and honor your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And you're right. That is what it says. When your kids are young, you should expect obedience from them. Absolutely. When your kids are older, you should expect respect, not obedience. Respecting and obedience are not the same thing. And your adult kids are going to do things that you don't like. Hear what I'm saying? They're going to do things you don't like. Bet on it. Just like I'm going to say things that you don't like. I guarantee you at least one person is going to go home mad from something I said today. I promise you. It's the law of the universe. It's just the way things work. So you can expect respect. Well, nowadays people do expect you to earn it, but you can still expect respect. But you can't expect obedience in all things from your adult children. You cannot expect that. That is unrealistic. So you have your assignment. Your assignment is this, that you have been strategically placed as an influence. God has placed you wherever you are strategically, whether you're single, married, or whatever, old or young, it doesn't matter. You were placed strategically. And you can be a blessing in that placement, or you can be a curse. When you look at the people in your life and the people you are influencing, would you say you are blessing them or cursing them? Is their marriage stronger for having talked to you? Is their faith stronger for having talked to you? Are their friendships better and more healthy for having talked to you? You have been strategically placed, and Satan will use you or God will, but you will get used one way or another. So your assignment is this: encourage their marriage. Don't gossip either to them, about them, behind them, whatever. Don't do it. If you're talking with the spouse, don't gossip to them about their spouse. Don't do that. You don't go to your kid and say, your spouse, they did this. Don't do that. Don't do it. Blessing and curses are both in your mouth. Don't criticize. Just stay out of it. Keep your business to yourself. And one thing that I've actually seen a lot in the past recent years, which is a very shameful thing, and we should be embarrassed if we do such a thing, is the parent will go to, let's say their daughter's married, and they'll go to the daughter's husband and try to connive and manipulate behind the daughter's back to get their way. You'd be surprised how often this happens. It is a tragedy when you're doing that kind of manipulation. That is a tragedy. That's something not only should Christians not do it, but even if you weren't a Christian, parents shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. That is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Well, what happens if they come to me? Well, first question, were you kind of willing for that? Yeah? Like maybe their whole life you've shown them a model of someone who's just itching for gossip? Have you done that? And so then they came to you because they knew you were willing? Now that we're past the awkward question, let's move on. Send them back. Send your kid back where they came from. You're married now. You need to go talk this out with your spouse. I'm not your spouse. Except in the case of abuse. Abuse is obviously a not normal disagreement. That's different. But the regular thing is your kid is going to come to you and try to send them back. You go work that out with your spouse. But if I'm not there to save their... Trust me, it's not dependent on you, but out. They made their choice. Let them figure it out. They'll get it. You figured it out. Remember when you were young and dumb? Well, you figured it out. And you made some missteps along the way, and guess what? You're still alive, and the world is still turning. Same thing is true for them. You're not the hero of their story, and the more you try to be the hero, hear what I'm saying, the more you try to be the hero of your kid's story, the more you cripple them in their own story, because they don't learn how to do it themselves. They always have mommy and daddy bailing them out of prison. Remember this. These are important issues, and you'd be surprised how often I hear these things. So let's kind of bring some ideas together. Back in Genesis, I know this is what we've been talking about is the whole leaving and bonding thing. That's what we've been talking about. I know it seems like maybe we got off topic. I guarantee you everything we talked about was about that. I guarantee you. Go back and listen to it again if you've got, an hour and a half of free time, I guess. But there are basically two commands from Genesis 2:24. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and bonds with his wife. Two commands. The first command, break away from your family. Break away from your family. This doesn't mean that you can't be on good terms with your family. This doesn't mean you can't talk to them. That's fine. That's not what we're talking about. They no longer run your household. You have a new immediate family. That's what we're talking about. That's the first command from God. The second command from God is to be intimate with your spouse. Even if you have a headache, even if you're tired, still be intimate with your spouse. Even if you get in a fight, be intimate with your spouse. That's a command from God. And if you want a strong marriage, you cannot neglect what makes a strong marriage. But we'll get to intimacy later, some other time after you guys have forgotten how mad you are, so maybe next week or the week after or something. But if you put your old family first, what happens? If you put your old family first, is first off, you're disobeying God. Second off, not only are you disobeying God, you are disobeying His plan and His will. This is what I see a lot of times. We say, God, reveal your will to me, while we neglect and ignore His revealed will in the Bible. So He gave us a whole book of His will, and we ignore that, because I don't want to live my life like that. My mom will always come before my spouse. And then we say, God, reveal your will to me. What in the world are you thinking? You cannot expect God to do that. I guarantee you your prayer life is going to be very dead. No matter how old you are, if you are married, leave and cleave. Intimacy must remain in your marriage to have joy. If you want to have okay, for those married people, don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. Are you having fun being married? Don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. Don't do it. Don't do it. Are you having fun being married? Is it a joyful thing, or are you getting teeth pulled out? Do you stand outside your door before you open the door and just think, do you go to work and just say, thank God I'm at work? Do you ever do that? Or are you having fun? That, my friend, is your problem. And you can't get out of that one. What are you going to do, fire? Boy, I'd love to see that one when you get home. Why'd you fire me? Shooey. But hey, you walked right into that one, buddy. My friend over here, he rides a truck. That's what I would suggest doing. I'm just kidding. So we can summarize with married people and single people. If you're married, a huge factor to your reduced intimacy over time, you've stopped being as intimate with your spouse over time. A huge factor to that is failure to break from your family. There's a failure to go all in. See what I mean? Which is very common. We want to have somebody that we sleep with. We don't want to commit to them. We want to have somebody that's there so we're not lonely, but we don't have to go all in and commit to them. Oh, no. It's much easier to do it the lazy way. See what I mean? So, yes, obey God, break away from your family, and what stops cleaving, what stops two people from being intimate? Not leaving. You'd be surprised how often this comes up. People will legitimately decide all of their future based on their parents' will. I'm taking this job because my family. I'm living here because my family. I'm doing this because my family. Now, I tell you this because this is something that I did myself. For a long time, I did it like this. It's my ministry. Grace, you just have to go along with this. And so we stayed in an unhealthy situation for a number of years that she has had to pretty much suck it up. That is not a healthy arrangement. And that's not me being the man of the household, is it? That's me expecting my wife to give up all of her hopes and dreams for me. Gracie and I, when we came here, I told her from the get-go, I said, if there's ever a time when you feel like you want me to stop, you say the word, I'll step down as a pastor. You always have final veto. I said, I'm never doing that again. Work, ministry, never, ever comes before you again. No matter how successful you are in your marriage, in your job or your ministry, if it comes before your spouse, you're a failure. Remember this. Remember this. Before I'm ever a pastor to anyone here, I'm a pastor to those kids and that wife. And if I fail them, I am the world's worst pastor. It doesn't matter how many people come up to me afterwards and say, that was a really good message, Pastor. I have failed. Not just as a pastor, but as a man. You never put something before your spouse. It doesn't matter how tight the money gets. It doesn't matter about all the other things. Never do that. The biggest problem to your intimacy is not leaving. Remember that. Now, if you're single, I know we forgot about the single people, but here we go. If you're single, a huge factor to your reduced joy in life is because you're comparing yourself to married people. They look like they're so happy. I'm not happy. That's what I need. Or maybe you remember who you used to be. Man, I used to be married. If I could just have that again. Or maybe it's not even who you used to be, it's who you want to be. Man, if I could be that. Always comparing. Those things aren't what is. You have to be content with where you are. And I want to say this as we close out into prayer. Don't just survive. Whether you're single or married, have kids, don't have kids, don't go through life just surviving. The goal is not to survive. The goal is to enjoy it. Enjoy it. Your life is passing you by right now in this moment. You've chosen to spend an hour and a half of your time here, maybe 2 hours, an hour and a half of your time here at this church together. You sacrificed something. You gave some of your life energy away to do something. You could have given the same life energy away to watch the TV at home too. But you made a sacrifice to come here. You're always sacrificing whether you realize it or not. Make sure that the sacrifice is worthwhile by doing it with a good attitude. If you're married, find the joy in the marriage. If you're single, find the joy in being single. Really, God has more for you than going through life complaining about it being another Monday. Please join me in prayer. Now, we're going to do prayer a little bit different. We're not going to have prayer at the front because that's just a huge mistake. We're not going to, single you out. But I'm going to just have you pray your seats. Nobody's going to raise their hands. Nobody's looking around. You're not getting embarrassed. Just be real with you and God. There are some people that as I've been talking, let's talk to the married people first. As I've been talking, you're realizing that there's just some changes that need to happen to your marriage. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say there might have been someone, because I've been in that same situation, where you say something along the lines of this: well, I know I need to make a change in my marriage, but I don't want somebody to get mad. And what you need to ask instead is, what does my spouse want? Stop asking who's going to get mad and start asking, what does my spouse want? So we're going to pray together. Lord, I just pray for those married people here. I pray you'd bless their marriage as they work to bless their marriage. I pray that you'd bring them together as they work to bring each other together. I pray that their marriage would be a healthy place of mutual edification where they're building each other up. I pray that their marriage would have the longevity, the long distance and faithfulness, but also that it'd be a place of joy. Lord, where they don't wake up in the morning and think, dear God, I have to get through another day with this person. But instead they think, thank you, God, that I get to spend another day with this person. Lord, that you would speak life in their marriage, no matter how far it's strayed, no matter how much hurt has been there, no matter how much it feels like it's just in shambles, that you would speak it to life. Lord, that they turn to you and they'd see the unhealthy things that they're doing, and you'd help them to build a stronger marriage. Now, I want to talk to single people real quick before we move on here. There's some single people, I'm sure, that you're just single and you're not really enjoying it. And you're even thinking, how can I possibly enjoy it? Please join me in prayer. Lord, I pray for those single people that they would find joy in life, just in the beauty around them, that they wouldn't isolate themselves and break themselves off. But Lord, they'd find good friends. They would push themselves to leave their comfort zone. And they'd be okay with being as they are. Lord, that you would give them a contentness in their spirit, that they wouldn't go out searching for someone else to fill their missing hole, but that they'd find their wholeness in you. Lord, that you'd speak life in their situation, speak peace to them. Help them to see that they're not throwing their life away by not hurrying up and getting into something. Lord, help them to have security in you and to stay the long haul with you, Lord. Lord, I just pray that in all these situations you'd speak to the people here, that you would soften their heart and help them to grow. Help them to be content wherever you place them, whatever's going on in their life, whatever problems surround them, that they'd be content, Lord. Pray you'd turn your face towards them to bless them. Lord, I pray you'd be a shield. You'd go before them and come along behind them. Be above and below them. Work in them and through them, God. In all things, Lord, let your name be blessed. And we love you, Lord. Amen.